Start from my extreme right. We do have Dr. Vincent Ogutu. Dr. Vincent Ogutu is the Deputy Vice Chancellor Planning and Development at Strathmore University. Karibu sana. Next to Bwana Ogutu, we do have Paul Ochieng, also from Strathmore University. He is a Dean of Students there. Good to have you. Karibu sana. And we have George Kifi, an advocate of the High Court. Yes. Of course, we're discussing a lot of matters to do with education, but also there are some which are of a legal nature. David Ndii's arrest, one of those. Raila arrest fears David Ndii probed. This is one of the biggest talking points even before we come to matters to do with education. And you can see the photo of David Ndii, the NASA strategist who was picked up by police in Kwale on Sunday evening and transported to Nairobi. He was later released yesterday on a police bond without being charged in court. We have his photo on the front page of the Daily Nation there. Also on the front page of the Standard, meaning it's one of the biggest stories, if not the big one, if not the biggest really today. There, a very interesting picture, David Ndii with his mom, Miriam Wangari, out of the Milimani court cells where he had been detained. We do have a lawyer with us, and even the rest of the gentlemen are Kenyans, if this was ever to happen to you. As a lawyer, what would you say to the kind of treatment that David Ndii was subjected to? Is it normal that you can be picked up by police, transported kilometers away from where they picked you up, they later present you in court, fail to charge you with anything, then later release you on police bond? Of course, even away from the politics, is it normal practice?
Well, let me put it this way. Lots of Kenyans go through that. This is highlighted probably because of the hate of politics involved in it. I certainly do think and believe that there's a politics that's juxtaposed to the whole incident. Let me put it this way. I think the police reforms that are intended haven't really gotten into the exercise of duty by the police. You see, there are many pieces of laws and legislation that have come into effect post the promulgation of the Constitution. One of it is the Fair Administrative Actions Act. It's a very new act, fairly, very unknown to many in the administration. But the mere fact that it's called Fair Administrative Actions Act, it means that certain things that need to be done to you as a matter of right before any action is taken. One of it is, unless if you read it with the penal code as well as the criminal procedure code and the Constitution, there are finer details as to how an arrest is packaged. One of it must maintain your dignity. That's very important. In fact, that's overriding. Whichever the circumstances, your dignity is then guaranteed under the Constitution. But more importantly is, if an administrative action is to be taken against you, which I believe this is one of them, you must be given notice. You must be served with the relevant notices so that you prepare yourself. For instance, if then you're going to Diani for holiday, you will not go to Diani for holiday, because then if you go to Diani for holiday and you don't obey a summon, which is the notice, to go to the CID headquarters, then you will be wasting your money, and then your family is going to be put into indignity. Remember that if he had been given the notice to go to the CID, it would be out of the public domain.
And that should be the practice. That should
have been the practice. As to why he was confronted while on holiday with his family, any other person will feel the indignity. And my point is, it could have been done differently, maintaining the confines of the Constitution, maintain the dignity as is required in the Constitution, and get the same result. Meaning, then you will get the person, you are going to afford him the protection of law, the lawyers are going to be with him because that's his right anyway, and you're going to question him, and if you want to charge him, you're going to charge him anyway. So either way, the packaging was really different. And remember, ultimately, the Constitution is supreme. Either way, whichever you look at. So if dignity is one of the requirements, then it has to be afforded.
And for anyone to suffer that kind of indignity, for you to be pulled out of a hotel while you're on holiday with your family, it says a lot. Even his wife is quoted there on page 7 of the Standard, also pictures on page 5 and page 4. Actually, this story has been given quite a lot of prominence of the dailies this morning. Page 1, page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation speaking about the same thing, as well as page 6. These spends 4 hours in cells without being charged. Same story here, page 1 of the Standard. The story is still going on page 6, page 7. They're talking about how the arrest was conducted, how some of the officers even brandished guns inside that hotel in front of Ndii's daughter. Now, these are some of the things that we're talking about, even without the politics. Even as a Kenyan, we do expect that the Constitution will protect all of us. But how does it make you feel seeing someone being subjected to something like this? One apology.
Okay, first of all, it's shocking because if you look at how they went to arrest him, showing up with guns to arrest an unarmed person, first of all, is intimidating. Then secondly, it leaves the people around David Ndii, traumatized. And if you look at the constitutional rights of everybody at time of being arrested, they were all violated. And I think it would be proper if somebody went into how this thing was organized and what was the logic behind it. Because if you look at the reforms in the sector of security, they are long overdue in some of these areas, and I think arresting of Kenyans, should be handled in a more humane way, because these are things that will happen. But if you do it well, as the lawyer was saying here, personal dignity comes first.
Yes. Of course, I'll also argue that why are you even talking about someone who was in a hotel in Kwale, at a beach hotel? We always see people getting arrested in the slums of Nairobi every day, and they're not afforded any kind of dignity as well. Dr. Ogutu, this extends not just to Ndii, but to all Kenyans. Even that Kenyan who's probably just going around a hawker selling their wares in a slum, but then the way they're arrested leaves a lot to be desired as well.
Yeah, I think for me this is a question of signaling. We can't really ignore the politics behind it, the timing of when this happened, and then the publicity with which it was done as well, because the whole idea is to get that word out that if you're on the wrong side, then probably this kind of thing can happen to you. So I think there's that element of intimidation. And this is with somebody who actually knows his rights. The persons you've mentioned, say in the slums, they wouldn't really know that they have to ask for a search warrant, they have to insist on their rights, that they don't have to even speak. You know how it is in other countries, you have the right to remain silent, anything you say might be used to incriminate you in a court of law. Here, they'll just catch you, they'll say, oh, tunaenda ndani, twende, they won't go through that because people don't know their rights. So here you're talking of somebody who's educated, who knows his rights, and then the way it's done is basically sending a signal to him. Then if it's done in the presence of the family, it's very actually well orchestrated, because the family will say, we don't want to ever go through this kind of thing again. Could you just back down from these activities that are bringing this kind of embarrassment to us?
Yes.
So I think it's pretty clear that this was aimed to intimidate him, make him back down, and send a signal to other people who might think of,
But going through all that, for the police to use all these resources to travel, because we do understand there were officers from Nairobi traveling all the way to Mombasa to arrest someone who lives in Nairobi, to bring them all the way to Nairobi, and for you to charge them in court at the end of the day, it says something as well, that probably the intention was wrong.
Now, there are two processes in court. There is a criminal procedure and the civil procedure. Why you wouldn't care much if you're sued today for a dispute of a shamba, car ownership, rent, or whatever it is? It's because it's not coercive. It's because the dignity at which it comes. Because you'll be served with papers, you'll go to court and respond to it, and then you canvass your issues. Yes, no, I have this evidence, you have this evidence, and you leave it to the court. You see, there's nothing that indignifies you. The problem with the criminal procedure is throughout it has an element of violence and indignity. You see, the element of arrest itself, if I have a dispute with you, when I tell you I just need to instigate an arrest, and that I get satisfied because of the violence that meted out.
Without necessarily charging.
You don't have to be charged. By the way, to be arrested does not mean you have to be charged, because the investigation may reveal there might be suspicion, but after you respond to what it is, then you realize, well, this guy has a point, or this matters a civil case, go to court and sue him if you want, and so on and so forth. But you see, the element of arrest, why then it is decoded in a very systematic manner, what should happen, how it should be handled, and that ultimately, the issue of dignity has even been coded in the Constitution. There's a reason for it. It's because obviously you suffer indignity through the criminal procedure and process. Then remember, you may be put in the cells, and by then you can be put in the cells and released on account of the fact that nothing has been revealed. And yet there was suspicion from the beginning. After release from the cells, you can be summoned through an investigation process every day for even 3 weeks, for even 1 month. So it's a very coercive process. Now, the problem is the discretion is with officers who, one, receive commands, and two, must act in a fashion that then details the nature of the offense or the suspicion. If you are, for instance, a politician, notwithstanding how you are treated, ultimately it will be looked from the prism of politics. So it is very important then to package in a rightful manner how the person is treated. Like this has been given the prominence it is because of the environment in which we live today. However, like my colleagues have said, I think the packaging was, one, to inform a deterrence to those that otherwise are intending to do one or two things. And number two, if then the indignity was meted out to pass a message, because you see, we just need for us to pass a message that we are with the tools of violence, and therefore a procession towards this, and if you dare, then these are the consequences. And by the way, you don't have to have a 3 days jail sentence or 30 days or 3 years. The mere fact that you've been handled in a certain way in itself sends a clear message as to what can be visited upon you. So it is in itself a tool that can be used or misused.
Okay. Of course, David Ndii was presented in court at the Milimani Law Courts, but was not charged. He was later released on a police bond of 10,000 shillings, and the DPP has asked that the file be sent to him once investigations are complete for him to pursue the matter further. Let's move away from that headline and let's talk about education matters now. Yes, education, as far as education is concerned, all set for record student intake next month. Remember, more than 1 million Form 1 slots have been created. This is a record. For the very first time ever, every child who sat their KCPE will get a slot in Form 1. And remember, there are only 993,000 students who sat for their KCPE, but the slots are more than 1 million. Actually, there's a surplus of about 50,000. This is something new, and now we're talking about 50,000 new jobs lined up for teachers. The hiring blitz, that's how the Daily Nation is describing it, meant to plug shortages in secondaries as free day schooling begins in January. That's also a big thing. And government to start distributing textbooks to schools directly from next year. Schools sharing compound to be run by a single board and head teacher. I've seen another headline to do with education on the inside pages, and it has to do with the new curriculum as well, which is also being effective at the same time. And many questions that Kenyans are asking is, are we getting too ambitious, trying to do everything at once? There's a new syllabus. We have free secondary education. We have more slots for Form 1, and day streams for national schools. Dr. Ogutu, you are an expert on education matters. Do you think the CS, or rather that sector, and the way this administration is handling it, is a bit overambitious?
It's definitely ambitious. I don't know about over-ambitious, because when you say over-ambitious, you're saying let's wait before we, for instance, make this education available to these kids. So what are we basically saying then? What should we do with the kids who don't go to school? If we don't do this, we might easily have 300 to 400,000 students ending their education in standard 8, and then we'll say let's just wait until we're ready. Then next year another 300, 400,000, and within 3 years you have over 1 million. And we're just waiting and preparing. So what happens to those kids? So the way I look at it is, let's at least try to do something for them instead of just leaving them out there because we don't have a perfect solution. In fact, in life you don't really get perfect solutions before you implement. You start, you learn, you make mistakes, you pick yourself up and you keep going. So even though it's challenging and very ambitious, I agree, I think it's a good move to just start.
But over-ambition, when Polo Cheng, in as far as biting more than you can chew, in terms of, we're trying to do a lot actually, trying to effect a new syllabus, trying to expand secondary education infrastructure, trying to implement free secondary education, doing all these things at once. You've been in education for quite a while. Do you think it's something that can happen overnight?
Okay, looking at the new curriculum, looking at what we want to do, it's quite a big chunk to bite at a go. However, if you look at where the country is in terms of education literacy, if you look at where we are in terms of manpower, if you look at where we are in terms of skills, skills management, you realize that we are far behind and we need to move much faster. We need to develop more people. We need more people to go into the bracket of literate population. Because if you look at our country at the moment, you look at the unemployment rate of 40%. You talk to employers and they tell you the people we are getting who want to work actually don't have the skills that we need in industry. So if you look at the new format, it has got a lot of competency-based education. And for me, I think there is no better time to go into it than now. We need to train more competent people. We need to train them in a faster, at a faster speed, because where the economy is, we need that manpower urgently. And also, reforms are long overdue in 844. And we need also to open up the sector, because the economic sector in the country. Because if you look at the new program, the curriculum, it has got very many other courses in it. Yes. People are starting to specialize at a very young age. And I think that is welcome. And if we wait, I agree with Dr. Guto saying that the time is now. You are never ready to do anything. So start it off and you prepare and you make the way as you move on. So I think it's a big chunk. Looking at it also from the manpower side, this is a very manpower intensive education system we are bringing in. They need to train a lot of teachers. There will be a lot of assessments to be done as the process is going through. That requires early training. Like now they are doing the training as we are speaking. So for me, I think the time is now. Let's go for it. Let's work together, because we'll need to correct each other on the way. We'll need to benchmark with other countries. But I think the time is now to develop the country.
But probably the biggest concern, and from most Kenyans just watching this, is who will effect this change. It's quite a huge undertaking by any standards. Looking at what we've had previously up until now, the cabinet minister in charge of education, the one we have right now, he can be actually applauded for effecting quite a huge percentage of this change. The examination reforms. Now we're talking about a new curriculum, fixed secondary education. We're talking about changes in even Form 1 intake. Remember, this is the same time we're discussing changes in the cabinet. Are we saying that we should ensure that probably Uhuru Kenyatta should ensure that CS Matiang'i remains in that docket?
Well, I think when you're given a job, my good friends have jobs, I do have a job, you must make yourself indispensable. If you don't, then you will be dispensed with. What Matiang'i has done, he has just told Uhuru Kenyatta that I am the guy to deliver. And if you remove me, then who else? You see, it can be done by someone else, but because he's been tested in the manner he has, then he has to be retained. And give it to him.
Tested in a different docket, and he could just be given that as well.
That is true. But remember that even for him creating the options and making it difficult for the president to apportion which way he should go, means that he's a formidable employee. If you have an employee that becomes indispensable, that's exactly what you want. And if we had many of those Matiang'is, honestly, debate a narrative of where the country is going would have been different. If we had people like Matiang'i dispensing justice in, for instance, other sectors and service delivery, then, the work of the president will be much lessened. But put it this way, I believe at the advent of formation of this country, there are two main things that we were looking at. One is poverty, and we're saying as a country, as we gain independence, we will eradicate poverty. That has not been achieved. But alongside that is probably the literacy levels need to, as much as possible, dealt with in a sense that everybody is literate. We haven't achieved that. Today, there's still illiterate people in Kenya. We have 50 years post-independence. 50 years of an age of any person. You've either achieved, in fact, if it's a man, then you're moving to your twilight days in whatever career you and how much you've lived. By the way, the lifespan of a Kenyan in terms of a workplace goes up to 55, and I'm told to go to 60. And by the way, again, the lifespan of a Kenyan to his death will ordinarily be around the same age towards 60 and you die. Well, of course, the mortality should be changed. The environment needs to change on that. But put it this way, poverty and education goes together with the literacy. In a sense, a person should be able to think for himself, to be able to fend for himself. So then, if you improve literacy levels, you are telling the person that then you need to fend yourself way forward after that. But most importantly, it has a bigger impact. You know, when a demonstration happens in this country, when a car is banned, it is banned by a person who does own a car. When you want a demonstration, you don't go to pick the people in Runda, you don't go to Karen and so on and so forth. You go to the slums, because that's a population that either is poor, something we started fighting from 1963, or is illiterate. So then the manipulation, the politics in itself, and the point of politics.
And the need is very clear. But the question is, who to effect it? Because this kind of undertaking is huge. We've had cabinet secretaries, and even you, I'm not asking you to name any, you can say who this one can do that job, this one definitely can.
Before he comes in, let me tell you this. I think we had this debate during the first term of Kibaki, and this is what we said, that will Kibaki succeed in this primary education? Because we saw parents going to primary schools, Olympic primary here and other primary schools, taking the student by force and saying, I have a right for my child to be here and the child remain here. But here we have free primary school schooling today. I think also the anxiety we have is very normal. We must investigate it, but I think it's also possible.
Yeah, Dr. Gutu, are you confident that any other person away from Dr. Matiang'i can actually effect these changes, given that even what we've seen, the improvements we've seen in the sector have just happened in basically the last 2 years after he took over? That's when we became optimistic. We started seeing the possibilities in the education sector. Do you think that if Dr. Matiang'i was moved to a different docket, that all this could suffer?
It could be a setback, but he's by no means the only Kenyan who can do it. Remember, a lot of credit goes to Matiang'i, but you have to remember Professor Magoha was right behind him, step by step, lots of experience in education, actually more experience in education. So there are people like Professor Magoha who can handle it, and who've already been handling it.
And there are those who even suggest that Professor Magoha could be a candidate for that docket cabinet.
Yes, so I don't think it's something impossible. It can be done by other Kenyans as well, and we have one candidate ready.
Yes, yet we've had so many other people in charge of that docket. We've not seen the kind of changes we're seeing now. That what Dr. Matiang'i has managed to achieve in the last 2 years is something that we've not seen in all the years that we've been here and looking at education matters. Kenyans seem to have a lot of faith in Dr. Matiang'i in running this particular docket. Should that be something that the president should consider, given the importance of the job market, given the importance of the education, if you were to compare between having CS Matiang'i running the Interior Ministry or the Education Ministry?
I think he would do best in education, because you see, that's where I think he's got his strengths. I think that's where he's formed a formidable team. Because if you look at Matiang'i himself, he's done his bit, but Professor Magoha, and there is the unseen team behind them. Because if you look at this process, it's quite a massive process and requires a lot of manpower. Now, you cannot do it alone. But also, one thing that we need to talk about is the goodwill that he has enjoyed. He's enjoyed goodwill from parents, from all the stakeholders, and also from the government.
That does matter.
And that matters, because in the past, others have not achieved because of lack of goodwill. You see, if everybody is fighting you, you don't have the time to do anything but to focus on the fight. So I think any other qualified person may do it, depending on the support from the stakeholders, most of the government, the parents, and other people in the education.
And that goodwill is not necessarily transferable, is it?
At times it is, because if you look at, if it is goodwill that is institutional, for example, if it is in the Kenyan psyche that we all want to improve education, then we will improve it. The same thing with Matatus, early 2000s. When Michuki, the late Michuki, told us, persevere with me, I'm straightening this thing. Within 2 weeks, he had strengthened an industry that all of us thought would be impossible to strengthen.
Yet he moved from that ministry, and you saw the kind of steps we took backwards. Those seatbelts are no longer in matatus. Matatu became chaotic once again. Is that the kind of risk we run if CS Matiang'i moves from the Education Ministry at this crucial time?
I would advise him to begin capacity building immediately in the Ministry of Education, so that should he leave, his legacy will not be erased.
Yes. Yeah. Institutionalizing these changes is not easy. It's been 2 years. Even the changes in examination reforms only began last year in 2016. This is 2017. There is even more improvement. If CS Matiang'i was to leave now, do you think anyone taking over, however qualified they may be, would be able to sustain that institutionalization of the changes?
That to me is a constructive risk. I say so because we have had a problem in this country of a disconnect between the leadership, in the personality leadership, and the socialized leadership. I say so because if you look at the personalities that Kenyans have celebrated in the resilience of Michuki, of Matiang'i, in Magoha, especially when he was in the university. In fact, I think during his time, there were very few strikes because of the manner in which he managed. Now, when you want to deal with Kenyans, you must be very serious and very strict. But the Kenyans will complain the first few days, but then they'll celebrate you in the manner in which you're handling it. I do remember of a high school teacher many days ago. It's different now, there's no caning, but he used to be a regional discipline master, and would on an opening day stand at the stage for every student from every school, and all students will be in uniform, tucking, and board the buses and go the direction you need at a very central place. One person ensure that the discipline in all the high schools at a certain region. You see, it's because of the personality cult. Now, he did not institutionalize that. Nobody else took over him. Nobody was trained and understudied him. When he went, of course, things are different. That is the same thing we have today with Matiang'i. He is a very good person in terms of the seriousness that he puts into his work. And by the way, if you took him to Ministry of Environment, probably he will succeed. It's highly likely he would. If you took him to any other ministry, he will perform better and outperform the others. This is leadership. Although I do agree that it must be institutionalized, the problem is that it is only him that subscribes to the norms and objective that's set out for him. The problem with many Kenyans and those that are working under him, in fact, the leadership that we need to celebrate in Matiang'i, for instance, is that he is able to create a team wherever he goes. If he leaves, then Kenyans, without the seriousness of leadership that comes over again, will go back to the bad habits. So is the problem the Kenyans themselves and the indiscipline in Kenyans as a mass, or is it then that we lack leadership?
Or is it the problem that we are over-dependent on the personality of one individual in effecting this? Because these changes have been there. We've been discussing the curriculum for years. It's only that after Matiang'i took over that you can actually see the wheels are moving a bit faster. Issues of enrollment in secondary education, after he took over, things are moving faster. There were people in charge of the education matters before he came in. All the issues of cheating never ended until he took over. Yes. You can see some of the resistance already. Page 3 of the Daily Nation: do not trash the new syllabus, head teachers warn. There's already resistance to this. Yes, new system need not be rushed, head teachers plead. This is the Daily Nation already. They're saying no, hey, slow down. But Matiang'i says no, it's no time to slow down. Do you think that we are over dependent on this personality, and that if that personality moves to a different docket, then that's it, we forget about all these changes?
I've not had a chance to assess Matiang'i in terms of passing on his legacy. In terms of getting things done, he's A1. I love the way he does things. You can depend on him to get a job done, and I wish all CSs were like that. But part of leadership is also selling your worldview, your values, your principles, the things that drive you to the people who are with you, so that when you step back, they can run with it. It's their thing. It's not your thing. You don't have to be there. So I haven't had a chance to assess him on that. And I guess the only way of assessing him is if he actually steps out. And that's when we would really know. But in terms of getting a job done,
want to see that?
I don't, personally, I think you should give people a chance to finish a job that they've started. I'd love to see him in that docket for the next 5 years, personally. But if he's moved somewhere else, that's when we will know whether he managed to pass it on to the people under him. And I dare say with people like Magoha, it's going to work. I've met some of the people at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, fantastic people. They believe in the new curriculum. So I think it'll still move forward. The only way to know it's an empirical question is if...
we should probably test it. And
let's test it 5 years from now.
Steve, because the thing is that we're just about to take a break. This, incidentally, is also the week where the President is discussing the list of cabinet nominees. This morning, President Kenyatta will be meeting the leadership of Parliament at State House, Nairobi. Now, the agenda will be a motion to discuss a likely extension of the August calendar to allow for, among other things, the formation of a committee to vet nominees to the cabinet. So discussions on who will be in charge of which dockets are also very key right now. And given the fact that we're talking about matters to do with education, that's why we're discussing if C.S. Matiang'i should be retained in that docket or be moved elsewhere. Let's now take a break. We'll be back to discuss more headlines.